was just an MRI. What part of the body? It wasn't the brain because I took a cognitive test and I aced it. I got a perfect mark, which you would be incapable of doing.
There are many, many very important issues that face us as a country related to the dangers that Donald Trump poses to the country. The clear and present danger economically, militarily, socially, culturally, just everything. He is just a nightmare. But one of the most pressing is his health. One of the most pressing is his cognitive decline, his inability to do the job, even if he weren't the danger that he is. He's still incapable of doing the job because of the problems that he faces and has faced for many years. We're now witnessing the steady decline of Donald Trump. He can't even stay awake during high-level foreign meetings. He can't stay awake in the Oval Office during any period of time. He's asleep most of the time in what he does. Yesterday on Air Force One, on the way back to Washington, D.C., after spending, like he does every single weekend, outside of the city, he was asked at the very end about his MRI. And reporters, justifiably so, want to know what part of the body, what were they looking at? What measure of ill health are you in that you need an MRI? He rambles, he rants, he insults, he points to his cognitive test, the giraffe, tiger, duck, horse, connect the dots. And he tells the reporter that you'd be incapable of passing that test. That the young lady who's a reporter would be incapable of passing a test that signals early onset or just what stage of cognitive decline through Alzheimer's you have. Fantastic. But we've got that. And also, Tim Walz is now again sounding off after his text from last week, his tweet from last week, requesting, demanding, putting into the ether, release the MRI results. It is something we really need to know about. Here is our addled, demented, violently aggressive president, war criminal president, Donald Trump, shitting on the press for asking very serious questions about his health.
They asked about my MRI. MRIs are very...
Governor Walz asked you to release the MRI records.
Can you tell us what it was
Governor
for?
Walz, you mean the incompetent governor? So if they want to release it, it's okay with me to release it. It's perfect.
What was the reason they
It's like my phone call where I got impeached. It's absolutely perfect. So if you want to hear about it or if you want to release it, you want to have it released.
Yes,
News Nation, failing News Nation.
No, sorry,
News Nation is doing lousy, by the way. But if you want to have it released, I'll release it.
Please, can you tell us what they were looking at?
For what, releasing?
No. What part of your body was the MRI looking
I
at?
have no idea. It was just an MRI. What part of the body? It wasn't the brain because I took a cognitive test and I aced it. I got a perfect mark, which you would be incapable of doing. Goodbye, everybody. You too.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir.
You heard it. If they want to release it, release it. Do you hear that? I'm sure that this is not official. They're going to need his signature from his healthcare providers. But it's interesting that rather than just answer the questions on their face, he has to resort to failing News Nation. It's failing the News Nation. Attacking them. Can you tell us what they were looking at? What part of your body was the MRI looking? I have no idea. Doesn't really bode well, doesn't imbue us with confidence in your cognition, Donald Trump, when you have no idea. And again, being someone who has had multiple MRIs, both on physical attributes like injured shoulders, but also when I had cancer, you know where the MRI is being taken. You don't say, I don't know. All I do know is it wasn't my brain. It wasn't? Are you sure? No one said it was your brain. You're volunteering that it wasn't your brain really leads us to believe that it was your brain, Donald Trump. It couldn't have been that because I've taken cognitive tests and I aced him. I knew exactly where the tiger was. I knew exactly where the horse was. Oh, and I knew that was a duck. You can't fool old Donald. And I aced it. You wouldn't be able to ace it. You'd be incapable of doing goodbye, everyone, as he runs away and the White House clip fades to black. Very theatrical, very poignant, as the reporters grovel and say, "Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, sir, for your time." Unnecessary. Now, there are some rational, decent leaders in the United States of America. One of those being the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, former vice presidential nominee for the Democratic Party. And he has been demanding the MRI results be released to the public. We have a right to know. You don't get your privacy of your health conditions when you're the president of the United States, and so much weighs on you, so much you are responsible for. We want to know if we have a demented octogenarian in the White House with the nuclear codes, an already malign, malignant, malevolent force on the body politic of the world. Here's Tim Walz talking to Kristen Welker about the release of the MRI.
Governor, let me have you weigh in on this, because part of your initial response to President Trump's post was to call for him to release the results of his MRI. And I want to give you a chance to give our viewers exactly a sense of what you mean. What exactly were you suggesting by that, Governor?
Well, here we got a guy on Thanksgiving where we spent time with our families, we ate, we played Yahtzee, we cheered for football or whatever. This guy is apparently in a room ranting about everything else. This is not normal behavior. It is not healthy. And presidents throughout time have released a couple things. They've released their tax returns, not Donald Trump, and they've released their medical records, not Donald Trump. And look, the MRI is one thing, but I think what's most concerning about this is, as your viewers out there are listening, has anyone in the history of the world ever have an MRI assigned to them and have no idea what it was for, as he says? So look, it's clear the president's fading physically. I think the mental capacity, again, ranting, crazily at midnight on Thanksgiving about everything else. There's reasons for us to be concerned. This is a guy that randomly says the airspace over Venezuela is closed. He's ruminating on if you could win a nuclear war. Look, this is a serious position. It's the most powerful position in the world. And we have someone at midnight throwing around slurs that demonize our children. And at the same time, he's not solving any of the problems. So I'm deeply concerned that he is incapable of doing the job.
Look, anger, frustration, the inability to cope because you're confused a lot of the time, these are symptoms, signs, symbols of a cognitive decline in Alzheimer's patients. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, but this is common sense that this is what happens when you're unable to think clearly anymore and you used to be able to. You become frustrated. And sometimes that frustration manifests in violent outbursts, in rage, in confusion. All of the symptoms that Donald Trump displays on a daily basis. Tim Walz is right to ask these questions. It's not normal behavior, the ranting, the lunacy. It's not normal. It's not healthy. And more pointedly, no one in the history of the world has ever had an MRI and had no idea what it was for. The problem lies in the fact that Donald Trump does know what it was for. He's fully aware that he can't walk correctly. He's fallen asleep all the time. He's confused. He doesn't know who people are. He wanders off. We've been seeing this for months and months and months. The problem lies in the fact that I've said multiple times that Donald Trump is surrounded by a cadre of ass kissers who won't say anything against Donald Trump. They won't correct Donald Trump. They won't compel him, beg him, urge him to seek help because they're brown nosers, which is by design. Anyway, what do you think? Very important. This needs to be on everybody's radar. You're the commander-in-chief of the United States Armed Forces. When an accusation has been leveled, a serious accusation of the committing of war crimes, and it's days removed from the reporting, and you're like, nah, I just don't know, haven't looked into it. It looks like if someone's going to be labeled a war criminal between the two war criminals that we have in high office right now, Donald Trump, commander-in-chief, war criminal, and the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, war criminal and murderer, only one's going to survive. This is cutthroat, running man, survival of the fittest action, and it is going to be Donald Trump, who seems to be poised on the precipice, ready and willing to throw Pete Hegseth right under the bus. Yesterday on Air Force One, on Donald Trump's triumphant return from Washington, D.C. after his weekend away in sunny Florida, he was asked questions about the war crime that was committed. More and more experts are now, you don't have to take my word for it that it was a war crime, even though I've been saying this for a week now. Military lawyers and combat experts, active duty, former military are all saying this is a war crime. If two people clung to life on a burning ship, not in any position to fight back, and they were killed by a second strike, that's a war crime. That is murder. And asked about this on Air Force One, Donald Trump all of a sudden isn't an all-knowing commander-in-chief. He's not calling the shots and pulling the levers. No. Now he's like, I just don't know. But Pete says this. I wouldn't have done this, but Pete says, effectively distancing himself from Pete Hegseth. And I predict soon we'll be throwing him the f*** under the bus. Watch Donald Trump on Air Force One.
Can you talk a little bit about the strikes and the controversy around Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth?
I don't know anything about it. He said he did not say that, and I believe him.
So you don't know if there was
You're talking about the two men?
the second strike to kill the two men?
He said he didn't do it. He said he never said it.
Would you be okay with that if he did?
He said he didn't do it, so I don't have to make that
What
decision.
are your thoughts?
Look, the I don't know anything about it excuse just doesn't fly anymore. You're the commander-in-chief of the United States Armed Forces. When an accusation has been leveled, a serious accusation of the committing of war crimes, and it's days removed from the reporting, and you're like, nah, I just don't know, haven't looked into it. Not that serious, don't know. But Pete said this, Pete said that, I don't know. I wouldn't have done a second strike. It seems problematic, does it not? The other odd thing, and they wouldn't have known because this was Donald Trump on his way back. It's not like they're in direct communication while Donald Trump is in the middle of a gaggle. But Donald Trump's surrogates were sent out all across the spectrum of news outlets over the weekend. And chief among them, I don't know why, they're constantly going to Mark-Wayne Mullen from Oklahoma, dumbest of the dumb guys. But he had something very curious to say about the use of the military abroad and at home. There's this talk about lethality constantly coming out of the mouth of the credibly accused rapist of women, Pete Hegseth. And it's about lethality, maximizing lethality in our force. And we need to combatize or whatever, all these little Pete-isms and Hegseth-isms that he wants to normalize among our military and the Department of Defense. And Mark Mullen, again, another guy who never served at all, but apparently colors himself some kind of a military expert, is waxing about how lethality will be brought abroad, home and abroad. The United States military will bring their lethal force of sending rounds down range and ending the lives of combatants, will bring that lethality here, inside the borders of the United States of America. Watch dumbest of the dumb guys, Mark-Wayne Mullen.
The president and the Secretary of War has been very clear they're going to use lethality against our enemies, home and abroad. This has been very clear what's going on right now. that the drug organization that is considered a terrorist organization that is flooding our streets with drugs, that's killing Americans every single day, they're being proactive on it. Good on them. Are we doubting that these drug dealers are actually drug dealers? Do we think they're just out there fishing? Do we doubt that this is a terrorist organization that's killing thousands and thousands of people on our streets? What are we questioning here? These individuals don't care about the lives of our friends and families. Why do we care if we take them out in international water? It is a war because they've declared war on our streets, and the President and Secretary Hegseth is doing exactly what we should be doing, being proactive against our enemies, and that's what they're doing here. And I applaud them for doing something, because the past administration did absolutely nothing why thousands of Americans died on our streets.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that, again, that it's the Republican chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee and the Republican chair of the House Armed Services Committee who say that they want to look at the whole operation, which you just described.
Look, he might be a dumb shit, and to be sure he is. It is inarguable that he is. But when a United States senator, an ally of the President of the United States, a stated ally of the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, when he says the President and the Secretary of War have been clear, they're gonna use lethality against our enemies, home and abroad. Which enemies at home is the United States military going to use lethal force against? Mark Wayne? You can't just chalk this up to misspeaking. He's a seated, elected United States senator. He's no longer a doofusy congressman from Oklahoma. Now he represents the entire state. He's a professional communicator. Should be, right? And he is intimating that the President and Secretary of War, two war criminals, are ready to bring that lethal combat, that killing of enemies at home. Really, what need is there of me to analyze this, to provide commentary? This is scary, disgusting, anti-constitutional, illegal. And while all of the consternation has been going on for the better part of 2 weeks about the calls for United States military members to only follow lawful orders, and you got senators here saying the military is going to bring lethal force against American citizens. What do you think? Again, I don't need to make comments on this. We can leave this to everybody else here. It's pretty self-evident. Can you explain why you would pardon a notorious drug trafficker? I don't know who you're talking about. Are there so many notorious drug traffickers that you're getting ready to pardon or have pardoned that there's too many to count? If you listen to Donald Trump, I think listening to Donald Trump and taking his word for things isn't really going to add up to a lot. You got to watch his actions, and that's what really we're going to be talking about today. But if you listen to Donald Trump, you would believe that he is endeavoring to eradicate drug trafficking and the scourge of drug violence and the entire economy of the global drug market. Single-handedly, he's gonna take care of this for us. So dedicated to the prospect of eradicating drug trafficking that he's willing to commit war crimes in the process. He and Thirsty Pete Hegseth, Rapey Pete Hegseth. And then we find out that he's going to pardon, a full pardon, unconditional pardon, for the former president of Honduras, who is serving a 45-year, ultimately a life sentence for horrific crimes surrounding drugs. Like an insane amount, 400 tons of cocaine. He was found guilty by a jury of his peers in an investigation and a trial that began when Donald Trump was president and then ended when Joe Biden was president. So this isn't all about, oh, Joe Biden, it's corruption. They can't do that anymore. It started under Donald Trump. But Donald Trump pardoned this guy, and when asked questions about it, he, starts to play dumb and I think realizes, oh, this isn't going to work, and then course corrects and then justifies, acting as though this president, this drug trafficker, was railroaded in his prosecution. Watch this from yesterday on Air Force One.
It's so clear how you want to keep drugs out of the U.S.
Right.
Can you explain more about why you would pardon a notorious drug trafficker?
Well, I don't know who you're talking about. Which
Juan Orlando Hernandez.
Well, I was told, I was asked by Honduras, many of the people of Honduras, they said it was a Biden setup. I don't mean Biden. Look, Biden didn't know he was alive. But it was the people that surround the Resolute desk, surround Biden when he was there, which was about very little time. And the people of Honduras really thought he was set up and it was a terrible thing. He was the president of the country. And they basically said he was a drug dealer because he was the president of the country. And they said it was a Biden administration setup. And I looked at the facts and I agreed with them.
What evidence did you share that he was set up and that he wasn't?
Well, you take a look. I mean, they could say that you take any country you want. If somebody sells drugs in that country, that doesn't mean you arrest the president and put him in jail for the rest of his life.
Don't you love that? Can you explain why you would pardon a notorious drug trafficker? I don't know who you're talking about. You don't know? Are there so many notorious drug traffickers that you're getting ready to pardon or have pardoned that there's too many to count? You got to be more specific than that, sweetheart. Is that what he wants us to believe? Many of the people of Honduras said it was a Biden setup. Yeah, I'm sure all of them are saying, oh, it's a Biden setup. I looked at the facts and agreed with them. What facts? That's the follow-up that was not asked. What evidence can you share that it was a setup? You can take any country you want. If somebody sells drugs in that country, that doesn't mean you arrest the president and put him in jail for the rest of his life. No one says that drugs were sold in the country and then he was arrested for it. He was taking bribes from El Chapo, helping to traffic 400 tons of cocaine. This is a statement from the DOJ, by the way. Juan Orlando Hernandez, former president of Honduras, sentenced to 45 years in prison for conspiring to distribute more than 400 tons of cocaine and related firearms offenses. U.S. Attorney Damian Williams said, as the former two-term president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez had every opportunity to effect positive change for his country. Instead, Hernandez helped to facilitate the importation, of an almost unfathomable 400 tons of cocaine to this country. Billions of individual doses sent to the United States with the protection and support of the former president of Honduras. Now, after years of destructive narco trafficking of the highest imaginable magnitude, Hernandez will spend 45 years where he belongs, in federal prison, said the DOJ at the time, until Donald Trump issued a pardon. I'm going to read a little bit about, because as always, you don't take my word for it. Listen to what I have to say and test the veracity of my remarks. Listen to what others have to say, but decide for yourself. And it's because of the remarks of some of the individuals I'm going to quote from this New York Times article that should lead you to be very dismayed about what is taking place. And also be asking the question, what did Donald Trump get in return for this? Because every pardon we've seen involves something that Donald Trump gets in return. It's bribery is what's taking place right here. Sometimes, I guess, extortion, if they are demanding something in advance of the thing they're going to do for the person. Anyway, here's the headline from the New York Times. Trump announces pardon for Honduran ex-president convicted in drug case. Juan Orlando Hernandez was accused of receiving millions in bribes and partnering with cocaine traffickers. He was convicted in Manhattan in 2024 and sentenced to 45 years in prison. They'd accused him of taking bribes during his campaign from Joaquin Guzman, the notorious former leader of the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico, known as El Chapo, and of running his Central American country like a narco state. The judge in his case, P. Kevin Castell, had called Mr. Hernandez, quote, a two-faced politician hungry for power who masqueraded as an anti-drug crusader while partnering with traffickers. And prosecutors had asked the judge to make sure Mr. Hernandez would die behind bars, citing his abuse of power, connections to violent traffickers, and, quote, the unfathomable destruction caused by cocaine. Now, again, you heard him say, this is the Biden setup, it's a Biden setup, it's a Biden setup. That's deflection. That's a lie. It began under Donald Trump, under his administration. So if it was a setup, the setup was started by Donald Trump himself. The prosecution stretched across Mr. Trump's first term and concluded during Joe Biden's time as president. In the end, Mr. Hernandez was again sentenced to 45 years in prison in federal district court in Manhattan, capping what prosecutors had presented as a sprawling conspiracy. So, before I read two more paragraphs here, we need to keep in mind that Joe Biden doesn't see that someone is convicted. As we're witnessing across all of the cases that are being dismissed and juries are saying no to all across the country that are involving Donald Trump and his prosecution, persecution, punishment, lawfare against Joe Biden and Democrats and perceived enemies, you see that a president can't just order a conviction. We have a jury process. There was a grand jury in this case that saw evidence and saw that evidence was sufficient to send it to a jury for trial. And then in the trial, all of the evidence was laid out and 12 jurors said guilty, unanimously said guilty. Joe Biden didn't flip a switch and see a guilty verdict go off. It's not like a cartoon where you pull the trigger and a big flag comes out that says, boop, convicted. That's not how it works. MAGA, being very illiterate relative to the civics of our country, they just don't know that. A spokesman for the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, where Mr. Hernandez was tried, declined to comment. Of course, working for Donald Trump, they don't want to have anything to do with this. A Drug Enforcement Administration agent who worked on the investigation into Mr. Hernandez and spoke anonymously because he was not authorized to speak publicly about the matter, called the pardon lunacy. Mike Vigil, a former chief on international operations at the same agency, also reacted with disbelief to news of the pardon. Mr. Vigil said the move imperiled the reputation of the United States and its international investigations into drug trafficking. Quote, this action would be nothing short of catastrophic and would destroy the credibility of the United States in the international community, Mr. Vigil said on Friday. And then finally, Mr. Trump's vow to pardon such a high-profile convicted drug trafficker appeared in journalists. New York Times, man. Donald Trump's vow to pardon, it appeared to be in conflict with what his stated objectives are relative to drug trafficking and the stopping of the scourge of drugs. It appeared that way. Get a load of this. Mr. Trump's vow to pardon such a high-profile convicted drug trafficker appeared to contradict the president's campaign to unleash the might of the American military on small boats in the Caribbean and Pacific that his administration says, without evidence, are involved in drug trafficking. That campaign has so far killed more than 80 people since it began in September, and at least 2 of those deaths are being called for to be investigated for as war crimes, as murders on the high seas. So I guess this is a lesson in media literacy and with a critical analysis of how the media talks about things. But also that we're going to have to wait and see where this pans out to see what Donald Trump gains from this pardon. Follow the money, especially where it relates to Donald Trump and his crimes and his profiting off the White House, the presidency, the United States, we the people. What do you think? I invite you to this conversation. We can have it in the comments below. Like and comment and subscribe and share this video. All those things go a long way to help this program and just independent media in general. The more of us there are, the more views and the more eyeballs that we maintain, the fewer are being bamboozled by corporate media. So you could do your part there. You can call the voicemail line, 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me daily@dollemore.com.
There was no process. We were allowing open borders. We were allowing criminals to come into our country.
Cue sarcasm. Why would anybody think that Donald Trump would issue an illegal order to the United States military when he does such a good job of not issuing illegal orders in other parts of the government? End sarcasm. A federal judge, a panel of judges in an appeals court, I think it's the 3rd district, has decided that Alina Habba is illegally serving as the U.S. Attorney for New Jersey. Unlawfully serving. That Donald Trump made an unlawful appointment, illegal appointment. And she's still out there making noise, flapping her lips on Fox News about things that are not in her purview as the U.S. Attorney illegally acting U.S. Attorney for the District of New Jersey. Here's from CNN. Former Trump personal lawyer Alina Habba is unlawfully serving as the U.S. Attorney for New Jersey, appeals court says. And again, not just one judge, a 3-judge panel unanimously said, this is not how it works. Donald Trump is trying to have it all the ways. A federal appeals court on Monday found Alina Habba, President Trump's former personal attorney, is serving unlawfully as U.S. Attorney for New Jersey, dealing a legal blow to the Trump administration that could have far-reaching consequences on other appointments across the country. A panel of 3 appellate judges with the 3rd U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, not 3rd District, 3rd Circuit is what I meant to say, of appeals, upheld a lower, that was from earlier. Earlier, I said the wrong thing, not in this thing. Just keeping you on your toes, I guess. A panel of 3 appellate judges with the 3rd U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals upheld a lower court's finding that the administration violated the law. The administration violated the law. Donald Trump violated the law when it used a series of maneuvers to install Habba in the position after failing to win Senate support. Quote, under the government's delegation theory, Habba may avoid the gauntlet of presidential appointment and Senate confirmation and serve as the de facto U.S. attorney indefinitely. The unanimous 3-judge panel wrote, quote, this view is so broad that it bypasses the constitutional appointment and Senate confirmation process entirely. And she's still out there. Alina Habba still running her mouth about things that are not in her purview relative to the shooting of the National Guard soldier here in Washington, D.C., not in New Jersey. The National Guard soldier, Sarah Beckstrom, 20 years old, from West Virginia, not from New Jersey. Why would Alina Habba, I'm going to stop calling her the U.S. Attorney for New Jersey because she's not. These judges have just ruled she's not the U.S. Attorney. She's just an attorney who I guess hangs around the office. She was on Fox News waxing authoritative about a thing that she has nothing to do with. Watch this.
Is that there was a stringent vetting process under the prior administration, and that in itself is flawed. There was no process. We were allowing open borders. We were allowing criminals to come into our country, and then there were individuals that were saying that this should be a safe harbor, a safe haven. Why? America is America because we protect our own. We don't allow this to happen. So when you say we, I want to be very clear. It is not a we. It is not the Trump administration. It was not Trump 1, and it is most certainly not Trump administration that is currently happening. It was the Biden administration that allowed this individual in, that didn't properly vet them, and now an individual who stepped in for someone on Thanksgiving so they could go home, who got sworn in the day prior, is now dead. A 20-year-old is dead. And that is why we fight so hard every day at this Department of Justice.
You, Alina Habba, you're not the U.S. Attorney for the District of New Jersey. You're unlawfully there. I don't know why they would have you in the office. But 2, you're not, even if you were legally appointed to that position as an interim or an acting U.S. attorney, you're not a spokesperson for the administration. You work within the Department of Justice. You work for Pam Bondi. Now, of course, that is within it's kind of a nebulous area where they're in the judiciary, but also they work for the executive branch of the government. But even under that, if I'm straining my brain and moving into this weird shadowy area, she's still not a spokesman. She wants to be she wants to be Caroline Leavitt so badly that she's scheduling, I would bet, my guess would be, people in the White House are like, hey, why is she scheduling interviews and talking about this? This is not her job. We put her in there to be something else. I think even this administration is a little bothered by the hubris of this dipshit. Alina Habba. Anyway, what do you think? I invite you to this conversation. We are in a situation where they are getting more brazen, more unhinged in their decision-making, more flagrant in their violation of the United States Constitution, of their ignoring of court orders, whether that be district court judges or circuit court appeals courts, or even the Supreme Court of the United States. They've gone through spats of ignoring orders from them. If you remember the illegal removal and refusal to bring back Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Anyway, it's not only going to be the judiciary that saves us. It cannot be. It's certainly not going to be the Congress that saves us. Not until after the midterms, when we have a strong Democratic majority, which it looks like things are shaping up to be good in that regard. But it's going to take our effort. It's going to take our organization to get out there in the streets, to get out there and protest, to be calling your members of Congress, to be talking to your neighbors and your friends and your acquaintances, to get active and organized in politics in a manner that you really never have, because our country, the survival of our nation literally hangs in the balance. Anyway, I don't want to be overwrought about it, but these are things that I believe are very important and real. Very, very real, clear and present danger posed by Donald Trump and the Christian nationalist wackos that he has around him. Anyway, what do you think? I invite you to this conversation. Let's have it in the comments below the video, wherever you're watching it.
The vetting process all happened under Joe Biden's administration.
But was he vetted when he was granted asylum? Are you saying he wasn't vetted when he was granted asylum?
You can tell when Trump people have nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, because they start giving nonsensical excuses for their behavior and to try to deflect from the blame that squarely falls on their shoulders. Kristi Noem was on 2 different Sunday shows yesterday, Meet the Press and This Week with Jonathan Karl. I guess George Stephanopoulos is out. Stephanopoulos is out. So I want to go over this. One, this is going to be kind of a media critique, a little bit of commentary on how they're doing their jobs. I've long held the position that since Tim Russert, we've really not had a good host of Meet the Press on NBC. God rest his soul. We had Chuck Todd we had David Gregory for a while, and then Chuck Todd, and now we have Kristen Welker. None of them are doing their fucking jobs. None of them are asking the correct follow-ups. None are asking even the correct questions. And look, I know it's a tough job. It's got to be nearly impossible, but that's why you need an impossibly talented person to do the job that has so much importance. So much credibility is under the masthead of Meet the Press. It takes someone special to do this job. I'm not up to the task. I'm not saying, oh, I could do this. No, I could do a better job than Kristen Welker. Certainly not like Tim Russert. So let's start with this very first clip. And let me start by saying this. I know I've gone on here. It's a minute and 45 in, and I'm just getting to it. They want you to believe, relative to the shooting of Sarah Beckstrom from West Virginia, 20 years old, the National Guard soldier who was murdered here in Washington, D.C. They want you to believe that Joe Biden provided no vetting whatsoever of the individual who is alleged to have killed her. None. No vetting. That's what she says. What vetting did the Trump administration do before giving the suspect asylum? Joe Biden completely did not vet any of these individuals, did not vet this individual. They want you to believe that, and that when Donald Trump granted him asylum, they went through the file. They went, well, this person's going to be, we're going to maybe give him asylum to the United States. Let's see what kind of vetting was done. Joe Biden didn't do any vetting. All right. Approved, he has asylum. That's what they want you to believe, because that is the very best narrative that they can spin relative to their absolute participation in what took place. Not only the deployment of the National Guard to Washington, D.C., where they are unneeded, unwanted, but also the fact that they granted asylum to the guy who they alleged to pull the trigger. I believe he did it. We'll have to follow the case. But that's what they want you to believe. So that's what this first clip is. Watch this, and then we'll move on.
Now, when we vet individuals under this administration, we know who they are, why they are here, and going through that. Unfortunately, this individual, that entire process happened under Joe Biden's watch.
Well, but just to be very clear, I want to go back to what happened on the Trump administration's watch. He was extensively vetted in order to serve alongside U.S. service members as a part of the CIA-trained strike force. But in terms of what happened on the Trump administration's watch, just to be very clear, what vetting did the Trump administration do before giving this suspect asylum?
The vetting process, Kristen, happens when the person comes into the country, and Joe Biden completely did not vet any of these individuals, did not vet this individual.
You heard it. No vetting. No vetting. Joe Biden gave no vetting. Now, I'm going to play one more clip from Meet the Press. We'll talk about it a little bit. Then we're going to move on to when she was on This Week with Jonathan Karl. And her story kind of evolved from the Meet the Press visit, the interview on Meet the Press. Her story started getting a little bit more believable, maybe, because they're starting to hone in on the things that are just unbelievable and stupid and don't line up. Watch this second clip from Meet the Press.
That's the Biden administration's responsibility. This is the consequences of the dangerous situation he put our country in when he allowed those people to infiltrate our country during that abandonment of Afghanistan. And that's why I'm so grateful we have a president now that isn't going to allow it to happen, that he now has put in place measures under his watch at the Department of Homeland Security that we are bringing in new information on vetting, new information to use, such as what do they do on Facebook? What do they do on TikTok and other social media platforms? And who are they talking to? Who are their conversations with? And we use their biometric data information now to track to make sure they are who they say they are, and they're here for their right intentions.
And we are going to talk about some of the steps the president is taking, but I just want to be very clear about this, because his asylum was approved in April of this year on the Trump administration's watch. So just to be very clear, was there a vetting process in place to approve that asylum request?
Yeah, the vetting process all happened under Joe Biden's administration.
But was he vetted when he was granted asylum? Are you saying he wasn't vetted when he was granted asylum?
Vetting is happening when they come into the country, and that was completely abandoned under Joe Biden's administration.
You heard the first clip. You heard it. Joe Biden completely did not vet any of these individuals, did not vet this individual, but also the vetting process all happened under Joe Biden's administration. I thought they weren't vetted, but the vetting process was. You got to, at least in the same interview, you got to keep the story straight. Kristi Noem, are you being poisoned by the fillers and the wax and the lips and the hair plugs and the nonsense? Are you being poisoned? Should we send help? Kristi Noem, vetting is happening when they come into the country, and that was completely abandoned under Joe Biden's administration. So in the same little set of clips here, these went back to back, by the way. No vetting, and then also no vetting again. You got to get it straight. It got a little better with Jonathan Karl. He started asking some of the right questions, pointing out some of the inconsistencies, but it still didn't get much better. Watch this.
You said that he was radicalized here in the United States. He was admitted to this country by the Biden administration. That's 100% correct, 2021. But he was granted asylum by the Trump administration in April. So did you see any red flags?
If you remember, John.
Yeah, did you see any red flags?
John, all the information that was gathered on that vetting process was gathered under the Biden administration. His asylum claim application started under the Biden administration. That information was provided by them, and the responsibility lies with them. And we need to know that and speak the truth of how this entire process happened so that we can fix it. That's what President Trump has been doing and dedicated to, is that when we look at people who deserve asylum, they have to be thoroughly vetted. They weren't under the last administration. That has completely changed under President Trump.
But again, he was granted asylum in April, so President Trump had already been in office for several months. You had been in office. Are you saying there was no vetting done by the Trump administration? You were simply relying on what had been done under the Biden administration? You did no vetting before granting him asylum?
The processes were put in place using information that was gathered during the application process that happened under Joe Biden. And that has been completely fixed. And new metrics and new processes have been added under President Trump. He immediately went to work, and we put in place under USCIS the new data and new information that can be gathered, such as communicating with governments, getting information from them, and making sure that biometric information and dates of service match up. Much of the information that was gathered and provided by the Biden administration wasn't thorough and wasn't done. And what kind of a crazy world is it when you have a president that allows millions of people to come into this country unvetted, not knowing who they are, from countries that perpetuate terrorism upon the United States? And when we saw during Operation Allies Welcome was over close to 100,000 people that were allowed to come to the United States, that Joe Biden said, you know what, we'll vet them after they get here. We'll let them into our country, and then we'll vet them after they get here. Okay. And then they didn't do it. They didn't do a good job, and it wasn't complete and thorough, and that's what is being fixed right now.
Again, what the Biden administration said actually is that the vetting was done before they came to the United States. But let me ask you about another subject.
Well, I think if you watch what happened unfold,
but you just said that that's
you
what
watch people pull on.
Biden said. I know, but
you watch people load onto those planes.
They didn't come from those planes directly into the United States. But let me ask you about another question.
During that period of time.
Look, this shouldn't be a situation where we're looking to point fingers and make blame. But if that's the game they want to play, the blame falls on the last person that touched the ball. You gave the guy asylum. And if you believe Joe Biden to be as incompetent as Donald Trump constantly says he is, why would you just go back there and say, oh, well, Joe Biden did it. I'm sure he made all kinds of mistakes, but let's give him asylum. That doesn't make sense either. Either you don't care about the possibility of a terrorist act committed by this person, and you don't care about the loss of life. I guess we're lucky it's only the possibility of 2 individuals who died at his hand. It could have been a more mass casualty situation, right? But if you really claim to want to fight terrorism and keep America safe and law and order, and only I can fix it, well, then only you can fix it. You can't rely on the vetting or non-vetting that was done by Joe Biden, right? And further, do a better job, Kristen Welker. You almost got there, Jonathan Karl. You almost got there. You almost put the pieces together for your audience to hear that the nonsense narrative that they're spinning. What you should do is ask the question, this is what you're saying. Is this what you're saying? Is this what you mean to say? But that didn't happen. They're failing us when they fail at their jobs. The only occupation listed as protected under the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. I'll throw this back in your court. Let's have a conversation about it in the comments. You can also call the voicemail line, 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me, daily@dollemore.com. Man, it's good to be back on a Monday. Last month of the year. Here we are, December 2025. Can you believe the election was over a year ago? That shit is nuts. Anyway, I love and appreciate you very much. I will see you next time. Until then, be genuine and take care of one another. You know the old sentiment that dead men tell no tales? Dead men don't testify against you in court. Dead men, when they are dead, have no ability to say, hey, I wasn't a drug trafficker. I was just a humble fisherman. They can't do that when they're dead. This headline from this exclusive reporting from the Washington Post is alarming. We live under an authoritarian regime that feels absolutely no adherence to the rule of law, no duty to their oath, their solemn vow to protect and defend and support this Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, because they are that very threat, domestic threat to the Constitution. This headline from the Washington Post, I'm going to read a little bit from this a little later, but I want to establish that these people are liars who cannot be trusted. Pete Hegseth is denying this reporting without actually denying it, doing the same thing that he did back when he was messaging on Signal, secret war plans to unauthorized no security clearance journalists who, one, didn't have a security clearance, and even if he didn't have a need to know, if you're familiar with the parlance in the military. Here's the headline, exclusive reporting from the Washington Post, alarming to say the least. Hegseth order on first Caribbean boat strike, kill them all. I want to remind you, though, because I'm getting ready to read a tweet from the Secretary of War, and then he's so proud of it, he retweeted it. Pete Hegseth retweeted it from his own account. The non-denial denial, the deflection, the same nonsense he did when he was denying what we now know to be true, that he messaged in a Signal chat group, Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic, secret war plans. Remember this denial, knowing now what we know about what took place.
As I also stated yesterday, nobody's texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that.
So those same troops that you are proud of, do you regret putting information like the ones you did in the Signal chat that could endanger those same American service members?
Nobody's texting war plans. I know exactly what I'm doing, exactly what we're directing. And I'm really proud of what we accomplished, the successful missions that night.
How your information about war plans against the Houthis in Yemen was shared with a journalist in The Atlantic, and were those details classified?
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does. I would love to comment on the Houthi campaign.
Why were those details shared on Signal, and how did you learn that a journalist was privy to the targets, the types of weapons used?
I've heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
He's doing the same thing now. So when you read the tweet, when you see the tweet, when I read you the tweet that he put out, know that he's doing the exact same thing that he did during Signalgate, a thing we now know to be true, despite all of his denials, despite all of his looking into the camera. That's all I have to say. No war plans were messaged. You're a liar, and we know you're a liar. And now we know you're a murderer. Donald Trump is a murderer. The Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, is a murderer who violated the Constitution, the requirement to provide due process. We are not at war with individuals who are trafficking drugs. You don't get to just murder people, bomb people, and then when there are survivors literally clinging for their lives to the debris, the fiery debris of their naval vessel, their seafaring vessel, because it's not a navy, they're not a part of a military, he orders, kill them all. Make sure they're all dead, because after all, they won't be able to testify. They won't be able to give their story because they'll be dead. And the Navy SEAL team followed this illegal order, the same thing that the seditious six, Mark Kelly and the rest of them, have been advocating. Please do not follow unlawful orders. Only follow legal orders. This is extrajudicial killing. It's murder. It's premeditated murder is what took place. Here's the denial from Pete Hegseth. As usual, the fake news is delivering more fabricated, inflammatory, and derogatory reporting to discredit our incredible warriors fighting to protect the homeland. Nobody's doing anything to discredit our incredible warriors fighting to protect the home. No one's doing that. It's you, Pete Hegseth. You're the problem. You're the one who ordered our Navy special operators to kill on the high seas with no due process. As we've said from the beginning and in every statement, these highly effective strikes are specialized, intended to be lethal kinetic strikes. The declared intent is to stop lethal drugs, destroy narco boats, and kill the narco terrorists. That was used by design, who are poisoning the American people. Every trafficker we kill is affiliated with a designated terrorist organization. Prove it. We're not just going to go off your word. You're a proven liar. You're a demonstrable liar, Pete Hegseth, Donald Trump. That's what due process is for. You bring them before a court and you prove the allegation against them. One, trafficking drugs isn't a capital offense in the United States of America. So you're providing the death penalty with no accusation, no indictment, no trial, no conviction, no sentencing. It is extrajudicial murder is what we're talking about here. The Biden administration preferred the kid gloves approach, allowing millions of people, including dangerous cartels and unvetted Afghans, to flood our communities with drugs and violence. Unvetted Afghans. So he's tying in the shooting of the two National Guard troops with this, apparently. I guess it's in some effort to get everybody rallied around to support this extrajudicial killing. The Trump administration has sealed the border and gone on offense against narco terrorists. Biden coddled terrorists. We kill them. Our current operations in the Caribbean are lawful under both U.S. and international law and with all actions in compliance with the law of armed conflict. That's just a lie. Great Britain, the United Kingdom, has now cut off intelligence sharing in this region with the United States because of the illegal actions, the authoritarian extrajudicial killing of these individuals that they can't prove. We're just going off your word. You don't go off the word of a fucking liar like Pete Hegseth. I'll finish it here. Our warriors in Southcom put their lives on the line every day to protect the homeland from narco terrorists, and I will always have their back. No one has a problem with the military individuals in operation here, Pete Hegseth. We have a problem with you. Your lies. You're violating the Constitution. You're dispensing of, issuing illegal orders to kill them all while they're clinging for life, which is a violation even if they were combatants. You don't get to just kill people who are out of the fight. That's the Geneva Convention. Here's the headline again. Hegseth order on first Caribbean boat strike. Kill them all as two men clung to a stricken burning ship targeted by SEAL Team 6. The Joint Special Operations Commander followed the Defense Secretary's orders to leave no survivors. I wonder why there are so many in Congress who are imploring our military to not follow illegal orders. I wonder why that would be. Strange, right? The longer the U.S. surveillance aircraft followed the boat, the more confident intelligence analysts watching from command centers became that the 11 people on board were ferrying drugs. So they say. So they claim. Again, no due process, no proof, no evidence of this. It's just a claim. It's just out in the air, in the ether. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth gave a spoken directive, according to two people with direct knowledge of the operation. Quote, "The order was to kill everybody," one of them said. A missile screamed off the Trinidad coast, striking the vessel and igniting a blaze from the bow to stern. For minutes, commanders watched the boat burning on a live drone feed. As the smoke cleared, they got a jolt. 2 survivors were clinging to the smoldering wreck. The Special Operations Commander overseeing the September 2nd attack, the opening salvo in the Trump administration's war on suspected, claimed drug traffickers in the Western Hemisphere. Let me restart that and cut out that little added effect there. The Special Operations Commander overseeing the September 2nd attack ordered a second strike to comply with Hegseth's instructions. 2 people familiar with the matter said. The 2 men were blown apart in the water. 2 men that we have no evidence were running drugs. No proof. They were not brought before a court. Let me say this. If on American soil there's a van moving through a neighborhood and police were to just blow it up and kill those people because, well, they had a bunch of meth in there, we would be outraged. That is beyond their power, beyond their authority. That is in violation of the United States Constitution, of due process, the 5th Amendment, Section 1 of the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. This is antithetical to the oaths they took. Now look, an oath, a vow, giving your word may not mean much to some, but it means a lot to me. It means a lot to anyone, it should, who has raised their right hand and swore or affirmed. Many people, so help me God, they do it under the guise of some loyalty to Jesus. Pete Hegseth, the white Christian nationalist. Hegseth's order, which has not been previously reported, adds another dimension to the campaign against suspected drug traffickers. Some current and former U.S. officials and law of war experts have said that the Pentagon's lethal campaign, which has killed more than 80 people to date, is unlawful and may expose those directly involved to future prosecution. Here would be my unless Donald Trump dies in the next year, like I predict he will, he's likely going to pardon the outgoing criminals when on his way out. Very likely. He'll give Pete Hegseth immunity from prosecution through a presidential pardon because they're breaking the law. He is guilty of crimes here. The alleged traffickers pose no imminent threat of attack against the United States and are not, as the Trump administration has tried to argue, in an armed conflict with the United States. Because there is no legitimate war between 2 sides, killing any of the men in the boats amounts to murder, said Todd Huntley, a former military lawyer who advised special operations forces for 7 years at the height of the United States counterterrorism campaign. Even if the United States were at war with the traffickers, this is the final paragraph, and I want you to really, really pay attention and embody this. Understand that this is just fact. This is not up for debate. This is not some kind of a theoretical exercise here. This is what we're talking about. Final paragraph. Even if the United States were at war with the traffickers, in order to kill all the boat's occupants, if they were no longer able to fight, quote, would in essence be an order to show no quarter, which would be a war crime, said Huntley, now director of the National Security Law Program at Georgetown Law. We're not at war, so it's not a war crime. And because we're not at war and it's not a war crime, it means it's murder. Extrajudicial murder. There was no indictment. It's but a word from Pete Hegseth. The proven, noted liar we're supposed to believe. The Christian nationalist, the white supremacist who's attempting to erase black contributions from the military, women's contributions, gay people, trans people from existence. We're supposed to believe him? Kill them all. Leave no one, leave no trace for them to be able to butt against our claims. This is mafia shit. Under the guise and the power and the width and the breadth of the authority of the executive branch of the United States military, for which we pay $1 trillion per year. $1,000 billion. So they can stand up a murder force, a rogue goon squad of SEAL Team 6. We are a failed state. Maybe failing, but I, for one, am disgusted and ashamed at the behavior of our president, of our Secretary of Defense, and of these feckless, weak commanders who followed through on this clearly illegal order. Clearly illegal. There should be accountability. We should stand up a war crimes tribunal, and people should go to prison. Pete Hegseth maybe should be put to death, sentenced after he is provided due process. He gets indicted. He goes through a trial. He is found guilty by a jury of his peers. The evidence is substantiated. It is weighed by that jury and then found guilty and sentenced. Mass murder is what we're talking about here. Mass murder. Pete Hegseth is a mass murderer. Donald Trump, a mass murderer. I'll leave it at that. Tell me how I'm jumping the gun. Comment below. You can also call the voicemail line 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me daily at dollemore.com. I'm going to leave you. This went a little long anyway. I love and appreciate you very much. Be genuine and take care of one another. You know, speaking of due process, let's stick with this topic a little bit more. This bombing of individuals that the government claims are narco-terrorists, even if they were. That's not justification to kill them, to murder them without a trial, to provide no evidence whatsoever. It's just a claim. It's just Donald Trump says it, Pete Hegseth says it, so we're supposed to believe it. The two credibly accused rapists, we're supposed to believe that people have no regard for human life, human dignity, the sanctity of life, like they always flap their fucking gums talking about. Well, Katie Miller, I don't know why CNN sees fit to put Stephen Miller's wife on TV all the time now, but that is what they're doing. And Katie Miller got into it with Bakari Sellers about this very thing. And we're going to be talking a little bit more, drilling down about due process, about the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution and the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution, Section 1 specifically, so you can follow along at home. And in this post, in this video I'm getting ready to share with you, it is remarkable the lengths to which they will ignore their oath to the Constitution. Katie Miller used to be a federal employee, used to be someone who worked for the Homeland Security Department, and then went on to worked for Mike Pence, and then worked for Donald Trump in some other capacity. She used to be a federal employee. She has raised her right hand and swore an oath to protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. She swore a solemn vow, just as Stephen Miller has done, just like Donald Trump has done, just like Pete Hegseth has done, just like Bakari Sellers has done in this clip. Seems that only one of those people I just named are actually abiding by that oath, holding sacred the Fifth Amendment, the requirement. It's not a fucking suggestion. The requirement of due process to all persons, to all people, not to citizens, everyone. Listen, for you conservative trolls out there, don't do to the Constitution of the United States what you do to your Bibles, where you just cherry pick the parts you like. You got to take all of it. You don't get to pick what you believe is honorable or accurate or enforceable. It's all enforceable. Watch this clip between Katie Miller and Bakari Sellers, and we'll come out of it, and I got some shit to say.
in the end. I want to go back to something that Bakari said. He said that those orders that were given the drug boats in Venezuela were illegal. Can you cite those statutes, please?
Yes, because it's actually called the Due Process Clause of the United States of America. Because can you point to one of those boats that actually had drugs on them? Do you know that? Do you know about the Trinidadians who were killed innocently, who were just fishermen? Can you actually kill those fishermen without due process? So the answer to the question is yes. I can cite the Constitution, just as Scott did.
If you go and say that those were members of Al-Qaeda or ISIS coming to our shores with enough drugs or enough ammunition to kill 1,000, 100,000 Americans, wouldn't you expect our commander-in-chief to take action to stop that? That's what's happening here. That is what's happened, by the way. That's what happens in every war zone, whether you go to Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran, Somalia. Go there. Let's talk about it.
Give me one name of one individual that you can compare to Al-Qaeda coming through that had enough fentanyl to kill all these Americans. Can you name one?
Let's go to what these drug boats are talking about, which is that we are actively ensuring that the war on drugs that we've been doing for 50 years, which has not worked one single day.
Yeah, right. We can agree on that.
It hasn't been successful one day. So wouldn't you want our country to try something different? You talked about elections and why they're important. In 2024, President Trump won and beat Kamala Harris under stopping the war on drugs, under stopping the entrance of illegal drugs into our country, under stopping the surge of illegal immigration into our country. And that's exactly what
Can I just put a fine point on this?
Yeah,
just really quickly. I think that my point maybe differs from yours, which is fine. But I believe that individuals deserve some modicum of due process. And I think that that is something that's enshrined in our Constitution. If you have some facts that you wanted to tell the audience tonight about the individuals that you know that were brought in, that we're bringing in, and maybe if we arrested them, maybe if we actually saw what was going on, maybe if there wasn't an ulterior motive, because what I do know, and I think you know this as well, that there were innocent Trinidadians who were just on a fishing boat who died as a result of that. I know that they're military members that swore an oath to this country who now have a problem with that. So I
think you're cherry-picking facts.
The other part is that, I mean, we also know that the United States did have some of these people in custody, and rather than actually try them, which we have done in the past, we let them go. We also don't know, they've never said explicitly what drugs are being carried on these boats, but the fentanyl, we know, is not coming from Venezuela. But the issue here is about the legality and about what happens when there is a system that doesn't contemplate whether things are legal or not. And the British seem to think that there might be things in our actions in the Caribbean that are illegal. We've had a top military officer resign from his post, retire years early. So there are some indications here that people are not comfortable with the legality of what's going on here.
And I will say this.
Again, why is she on there? Can you cite those statutes, please? Like she's got like the ultimate gotcha. Can you cite the statutes? Yeah, it's the Fifth Amendment. It's the 14th Amendment. It's the United States Constitution. And she really nailed herself there in this moment where she says, if you go and say that those were members of Al-Qaeda and ISIS coming to our shores with enough drugs or enough ammunition to kill 1,000 or 100,000 Americans, wouldn't you expect blah, 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 blah? If you say it, well, that's why we have due process. Katie, I know it's very difficult. You and your husband having any loyalty to the oaths you've sworn to the Constitution. I know it's difficult when you're a ghoul who is champing at the bit for the erasure of brown people in this country. You're desperate for a white ethno-state. I know that. I know. And it blinds you. It sullies your vision, your gaze past the myopic ethno-state fever dream that you have. I know that. But that is what the Constitution says. That is what the Constitution intended. It is what our entire system of jurisprudence is based upon, the foundational principles of the rule of law. If you say blah, 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 yeah, that's why we have due process, dumbass. The Fifth Amendment. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on the presentment of an indictment of a grand jury, blah, 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 blah. Nor shall any person be subject to the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor to be deprived of life, liberty, or property, without due process of law. Fifth Amendment, Constitution, sworn oath to it. Apparently not important. And then, not the only time it's mentioned in the Constitution, of course, the 14th Amendment, Section 1. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. So they're specifically calling out citizens. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Seems pretty ironclad. Yet, CNN sees fit to put the dum-dum on a primetime show giving just defense of Donald Trump, because this isn't about supporting and defending the Constitution for these ghouls. This is about supporting and defending Donald Trump at all costs. Because he is their king figure, their cult leader. His declarations, his orders, his whims are more important to them than the Constitution is, than the law is, than tradition, than the aspirational values that we talk about so much in this country, being the best, the greatest, the richest, the most powerful, the freest. What do you think? I invite you to this conversation. Let's have it in the comments below. You can also call the voicemail line, 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me, daily@dollemore.com. I love and appreciate you. Please consider supporting this work. I would very much, for $2 a month, you can support independent media. If I'm the guy who brings you value on a daily basis, please make it me. If it's somebody else, awesome. People in this space need support from their audiences. So if it's not me, if I'm just somebody you randomly watch, it's fine. Find somebody out there that you enjoy their Substack or their YouTube channel or their content generally and support them. A couple bucks a month, it goes a long way. But if I am that guy on YouTube, you can become a channel member. Just click the join button below the video or just on the channel generally, or go over to patreon.com/IDoubtIt podcast. I love and appreciate you very much. I'll see you next time. Be genuine. Take care of one another. Donald Trump is very close to getting away with the Epstein thing because of all the distractions he's creating all over the place. And we're going to stay on the Epstein story. We're going to demand that these files get released. We're going to demand that we know the names. We're going to demand accountability for people who were predators of children. But in the meantime, we have to trudge on, and we have to address the current what he's attempting to make distractions, but still those distractions, if they come to fruition, would damage the country. They are dangerous just by their very nature. And yesterday he posted on True Social this insanity about canceling the pardons of Joe Biden because of the auto pen, and also threatening to prosecute Joe Biden. Strange that Donald Trump can't be prosecuted for anything because the Supreme Court gave him just radical, unlimited, unprecedented immunity for crimes committed while in office. But Donald Trump thinks he can prosecute Joe Biden because I guess he wasn't president. Just like his presidential pardons can be canceled. Can Donald Trump's be canceled? Can the next person that comes in just cancel the pardons? No, they can't. It is the unfortunate element of our Constitution that until amended, we have to abide by. The rule of law, right? This is what he wrote. Any document signed by sleepy Joe Biden with the auto pen, which was approximately 92% of them, but Mr. Stats over here, we're going to lower drug prices by 5,000 million billion zillion percent. Great. 92% of them is hereby terminated and of no further force or effort. The auto pen is not allowed to be used in approval if approval is not specifically given by the President of the United States. It starts a new paragraph, I guess. It's Donald Trump. Look, we can't hold him to too high a standard relative to understanding his native tongue. I mean, they want English to be the official language of the United States, yet their cult leader can't even speak it fluently or write it fluently. Make it make sense. The radical left lunatics, all capitalized for some reason, circling Biden around the beautiful Resolute desk in the Oval Office, took the presidency away from him. Joe Biden had radical left lunatics in his administration. Milquetoast, middle of the road corporate Democrat Joe Biden had radical left lunatics. Right. When you finally did have a radical left lunatic in front of you, Zoran Mamdani, you kissed his asshole, Donald Trump. So none of this holds any water whatsoever, carries any weight whatsoever. Liar. I'm hereby canceling, through True Social, by the way, true presidential proclamation. We'll get to that, though. I am hereby canceling all executive orders and anything else that was not directly signed by crooked Joe Biden, because the people who operated the auto pen did so illegally, says Donald Trump. No due process, just a proclamation, just a declaration. Fantastic. Joe Biden was not involved in the auto pen process, and if he says he was, he will be brought up on charges of perjury. Thank you. You gotta love it. Thank you for your attention to this matter, says our addled dementia patient of a president. And now listen, you would be correct to say, well, that's just him on True Social. It's not official, right? And this might not be official either, but the official White House Twitter account also tweeted this with the quote of him, I'm hereby canceling all executive orders, blah, blah, blah. And you know they're serious and patriotic because they put a flag emoji. They put a flag emoji in there. Now listen, Manu Raju, somebody I generally think does great work over at CNN. He had Bill Brennan, a former Donald Trump lawyer, on. And they talked about this. Now, I wanted to bring this specifically, this analysis, because this isn't some radical left lunatic that Donald Trump would have you believe. This is a guy who represented Donald Trump in court. This is Bill Brennan, former Trump lawyer, and these are his opinions about this.
Donald Trump's former attorney, Bill Brennan, who's live with us as well. Bill, thank you so much for joining us, too. I want to start with you and about whether Trump even has the authority to do this. He's saying he can do this. Can he actually do this legally?
Manu, it's my understanding that the auto pen's been around since around 1930. 2011, President Barack Obama first used it in a high-value document. It was 3 sections of the Patriot Act that he wanted extended by Congress. Unfortunately, he was in France at the time. He used it. It was valid. In 2005, President George W. Bush asked the Department of Justice for an opinion, and the DOJ said at that time, under certain circumstances, the use of an auto pen is legally sufficient. I think the real issue here, Manu, is going to be scienter, whether or not President Biden knew that the documents that were signed with the auto pen were used. If he knew and he approved it, then I think it passes muster.
Yeah, because the president is saying that Biden would be charged with perjury. What basis does he have for making that charge?
Well, perjury is lying under oath. I don't know that President Biden made a statement that he approved the auto pen, that perjury would be applicable here. There's no doubt that the auto pen itself is a document that is a device that can be used. It's all going to depend on circumstances.
Oh, Bill, I think we lost Bill's feed there. He might have fallen there on the ground, but we'll bring him right back because he's got some good analysis here.
Do you think, Manu? I think we lost Bill's feed. It might have fallen on the ground. What? Look, I love you, Manu. I do, brother. But what gave you the first clue that you lost the feed and his phone might have fallen on the ground?
It's Manu.
Bill.
All right. Let's get back to the matter at hand. All of that is correct. I mean, he's doing a little dance there where he's trying to give some possibility of accuracy or legitimacy to the actions of Donald Trump and what's going on here. But there is no precedence for this. The auto pen is absolutely okay. And just because Donald Trump says with the flapping lie hole under his nose that Joe Biden didn't know about him, they've presented no evidence of that. They've given no credible, it's not even a credible accusation. Like Joe Biden, who's still out there giving speeches, by the way, Jake Tapper, still out there on the circuit, still making public appearances and not dementia completely ruined, as Jake Tapper and the Trump camp would have you believe. Anyway. There's no evidence of this. This is just talk. This is just a distraction so we can find something else to talk about other than the fact that Donald Trump has been credibly accused of raping children. He's listed in the Epstein files. There are emails from years and years and years ago of Jeffrey Epstein saying, yeah, of course Donald Trump knew about the kids, the girls. Anyway, what do you think? I invite you to this conversation. Let's have it in the comments below this video. You can also call the voicemail line, 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me, daily@dollemore.com. I am going to see you next time. I appreciate it very much. Be genuine, as always, and take care of one another. What do you do when the most infamous neo-Nazi, white supremacist, he's just a Nazi, admirer of Hitler, denier of the Holocaust? What do you do when that guy, the notorious Nazi puke, Nick Fuentes, was also a dinner guest of Donald Trump, the current and former, and at the time, not president of the United States? What do you do? Well, you defend it. What do you do, though, maybe if you're Jewish and you want to use that as some kind of a get-out-of-jail-free card in arguments about the right wing, the Republican Party, MAGA world, being in bed with Nazis like Nick Fuentes? Well, what you do if you're Katie Miller, the wife of Stephen Miller, for some reason getting all kinds of TV time, you defend the platforming of him through Tucker Carlson, while also saying, yeah, I'm Jewish. What do you have to say about that? Okay. What does that have to do with anything? He's a Nazi, and you're trying to distract and deflect from the actual question. This took place yesterday on Abby Phillip, on her show on CNN. And there's two people involved in this discussion. It's Bakari Sellers, former member of Congress from South Carolina, and Abby Phillip herself. And you would think that you would be prepared going into this type of a discussion, but Katie Miller is whatever the opposite of prepared is. Unprepared, I guess. It doesn't really get it done, though. It doesn't really accurately describe what took place, as she is metaphorically drowning in her own arguments, her own ridiculous assertions about the fact that, well, he has a right to speech. He has a right to, of course he does. No one's saying that. It's red herring this, it's distraction this, it's nonsense that. While you defend the platforming of the dinner guest of Donald Trump, the podcast guest of Tucker Carlson, Nazi puke, Nick Fuentes.
Not say, hey, Tucker, unacceptable. Don't do that.
It's not up to you or myself to police speech in our country.
I mean, shouldn't it be up to J.D. Vance to say this is not part of our movement?
Are you okay? Are you okay with Nick Fuentes?
Here we go. I'm a Jew. Do you want to go there? And let's say this.
Yeah, I just asked the question. Was yes or no?
Yes, I'm okay. If Nick Fuentes wants to be able to speak freely in our country, he has every right to do so. Do I agree with his views? Do I think that they should become mainstream in our country?
Yes or no question.
Absolutely not.
But hold on.
I really want to go back to this for 1 second.
But this isn't about whether he can speak freely. It's about whether someone like Tucker Carlson, who is a very powerful force in the conservative movement.
You host people on your show all the time who call my husband and myself a Nazi. So how is that any different from Tucker Carlson going on Nick Fuentes having Tucker Carlson on his show? It's not different.
He's actually
anti-Semitic. He's anti-Semite.
A Hitler admirer. Nick Fuentes is actually a Hitler admirer.
But he literally is not a good human being.
That is a different thing.
Excuse me. You have Jennifer Welch on your show very often, and you've never pushed back as she has called my husband a white nationalist.
Hold on.
That is no different than Nick Fuentes going on Tucker Carlson's show. It's not, and you should admit it.
Well, hold on. How is it anything similar? It's not remotely similar at all. Nick Fuentes sits around and says that he likes Hitler. How is that similar
to do with it? What does she have to do with that? She has nothing to do with that. Literally nothing.
Scott, Katie is the person who just said to me that it is comparable to say that Nick Fuentes, who is literally a neo-Nazi, is the same as somebody, a liberal, who has an opinion who is not a neo-Nazi. They are not
a hateful opinion.
The same.
How do you want? Excuse me. Let's go back to this point one more time.
But
Nick
Katie,
Fuentes can espouse an opinion on Tucker Carlson's show.
It is not the same.
And he didn't push back the same way you didn't push back when someone called someone in my family a Nazi.
Hold on a second.
It's not different.
Hold on a second.
It's not.
If someone comes on this show and says, I love Hitler and I admire what he did, they would never, first of all, I would never invite them on the show and they would never be invited back. So those two things are not the same thing.
But yet you've gone on Jennifer Wilson's podcast. It's the same thing.
They are not the same thing.
What I think is so,
That's remarkable, right? That they just can't say, yeah, he shouldn't be put on the air. He shouldn't be interviewed. He's bad. He's bad for the body politic. He's bad for the conversation. He's bad. He's bad for people. He's bad for the country. He's bad. It should be easy to do that. Not everything needs to be defended. Katie, Stephen Miller's wife. Again, I'm still struggling with how you are a guest on CNN, how you are to be providing any knowledge about anything whatsoever. You don't even know the basics about the Constitution, a document to which you've sworn oath on multiple occasions. You don't know about the Fifth Amendment requirement of due process. You don't know about the 14th Amendment requirement of due process for all persons. Yet CNN thinks, oh, yeah, she's the one to put up there. She's the one. She's got some great stuff to say, everybody. He's really going to inform our listeners. This is a public service we're giving to the American people who watch our show, that we have experts on, people who are duty bound to tell the truth. And maybe we have just different ideas, but we're going to, in good faith, address one another's arguments. And that's never the case. They got Scott fucking Jennings, Pumpkinhead du jour. And then you got Katie Miller, moron who has a mom podcast, who's the wife of absolutely a white nationalist in Stephen Miller. Fact. Not allegedly. He is a white nationalist. He is endeavoring for a white ethno-state. Get the brown people out. It's only the criminals. Yet no, it's not only criminals, it's also citizens that are being wrapped up in this. And why? Because they look like maybe they're not citizens. They speak with an accent that's not exactly like mine. It is racial profiling. It is unconstitutional, despite what Brett fucking Kavanaugh says. And they're here for it. They'll defend anything if it gets them to their goal, which is a white ethno-state, a complete dissolving of an immigration policy in the United States. Anyway, what do you think? I invite you to this conversation. Let's have it in the comments below the video. You can also, as always, call the voicemail line. Leave me a fewer than 3-minute voicemail. Please keep them brief. 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me, daily@dollemore.com. One more time, I will ask if you have it in your financial means, not if you don't, not if you're on a fixed income or disability or retirement, but if you have a couple bucks a month that you don't mind throwing away, it could be well used with this operation and independent media. You can click the join button below this video on YouTube to become a channel member, or go over to patreon.com/IDoubtIt podcast, which is another thing you should subscribe to. It's free. My podcast, I Doubt It. I love and appreciate you very much. Did I say the address? Patreon.com/IDoubtIt podcast? Yeah, because that led me to say the podcast thing. Anyway, I will see you next time. Be genuine. Take care of one another. To say that we have ghouls in the Republican Party in the United States doesn't really get it done. I don't know that I'm rhetorically talented enough to bring to bear the exact language that I feel about some of these people sometimes. Sometimes I let the lower Jesse, the lower thinker in me win, the lizard brain part of me. And when people who have called for violence against others of an opposite political stance, like Mike Davis, we're going to talk about him, it comes to mind, and I think that there's no way that Mike Davis has ever had violence brought against him, because he wouldn't act so freely and disgustingly online as he does. And now let me tell you about Mike Davis before we get into this tweet. He's a man who Donald Trump considered to be the attorney general, at the very least, the acting attorney general, before he finally landed on an attorney general person. And he has said horrible, wildly disgusting, violent things. And this is really no different. This is, you know who Gabby Giffords is? She's the wife of Mark Kelly, kept talking about Mike Davis. She is a former congresswoman for Arizona. She is the victim of gun violence, shot in her head. She suffers physiological effects of this, ramifications from this wound. Psychological, certainly, there's trauma involved. Neurological damage. She doesn't speak exactly correctly as she used to. She's slower. She's a gunshot victim. She almost lost her life because of political violence. And in the wake of the National Guard member who was shot, Sarah Beckstrom, 20, West Virginia, Giffords' organization tweeted this: "We are heartbroken to hear that Specialist Sarah Beckstrom, one of the National Guard members shot in D.C. on Tuesday, has died. She served her country with courage and dedication. She should still be here celebrating Thanksgiving with her loved ones." Right? Well, Gabby Giffords retweeted that particular tweet with this: "Specialist Sarah Beckstrom deserved a long, full life. My heart is with her family, friends, and fellow service members. Gun violence steals too many futures. We must honor her by fighting for a safer country, one where all Americans are protected from gun violence." Who could have a problem with that? What kind of a fucking ghoul would say the thing that Mike Davis did? Well, I just gave you the answer. Mike Davis, former in contention to be the Attorney General of the United States. This is Mike Davis. Gun violence, ? Fuck off, Gabby. The real problem is your piece of shit husband, Mark Kelly, and other Democrats who mass import terrorists, demonize the National Guard members saving cities, and call on 18-year-old enlistees to disobey the President of the United States. I would have you know, this never faced violence in his life, Mike Davis, also never served in the United States military. Certainly, he's only 3 years younger than me, had the opportunity to volunteer, to serve in the United States military. He could have been just a few years behind. We could have served at the same time in the United States Marine Corps, but he's a fucking coward, physical little coward who chose not to. Instead, he interned for Newt Gingrich and then went to law school. Yeah. Let me tell you about Mike Davis. Other than the fact that he has never faced violence, actual violence in his... Listen, and I'm beating that drum. Let me say this. When you've been punched in the face, it makes you question the things that come out of your mouth, right? When you've actually had consequence for shitty things you've said, out of line things you've said. I have. I've been punched in my face multiple times. And it makes you a little reticent before you open your mouth and say shit you can't back up. And when you're telling a woman who is disabled from gun violence to fuck off because she's concerned and showing empathy and love and compassion for someone that you're showing no compassion for, maybe you should fuck off, Mike Davis. Let me show you this tweet from the day after Election Day. This gives you an idea who's in MAGA world, who Donald Trump almost put in as Attorney General of the United States. This is the day after election. Here's my current mood, says Mike Davis, the man who told Gabby Giffords to fuck off. Here's my current mood. I want to drag their dead political bodies through the streets, burn them, and throw them off the wall, And then parenthetically, because after all, he is a lawyer, he understands the import of these words. Parenthetically, legally, politically, and financially, of course, says Mike Davis, a man who's never faced violence in his life. Here's a headline from an article I'm going to read 2 paragraphs from the Washington Post. And here are those 2 paragraphs. Referring to Trump's illegal immigration policy that separated families, Davis declared, "We're going to put kids in cages. It's going to be glorious." He routinely threatens to throw journalists into the gulag. Special counsel Jack Smith, who is prosecuting Trump for allegedly trying to subvert the outcome of the 2020 vote, leads a long line of people with targets on their backs. Quote, "I would say to Jack Smith that right now you guys are the hunters," David tweeted over the summer, adding that after Trump's inauguration on January 20th, "you're going to become the hunted." Then Davis has suggested that as acting attorney general, he will oversee a 3-week reign of terror to indict Trump's opponents and purge them from the federal government. This is who they are. Listen, people don't like the invectives that I throw around. They think I'm too bombastic, too radical, whatever. You know, maybe I'm not for you. Maybe I'm not. But what kind of language is justified to talk about these people other than calling them ghouls, other than calling them what they are? This guy's inciting violence and then is not the subject of it, is not the recipient of it. Like any other bully, like any other fucking coward, this guy's another one. He's cut from the same cloth as Donald Trump, just not quite as rich, just as arrogant, just as much unearned a title and station in the party and influence. Just another. I'll end it there. What do you think? I invite you to this conversation. I'd love to hear from you if you're from Arizona, if you are a constituent of Mark Kelly or a former constituent of Gabby Giffords. I think it's important that we all make more of these stories. Share this video. I would appreciate it very much. Anyway, what do you think? Comment below. You can also call the voicemail line 714-576-4054. You can email me daily@dollemore.com. I would appreciate your reaching out. And please consider supporting the work. If I'm not too bombastic for you, if I'm not too over the top, you can become a channel member. $2 a month. You can support my over the topness. Click the join button below. I would appreciate it very much. Or even better, because they take way less of a percentage, you can go to patreon.com/IDoubtIt podcast. Both those are great ways. Both those are linked below. And I will see you next time. Be genuine and take care of one another.